During the initial approach, it is possible that the ATC gives to us direct vectors. During the initial approach, it is possible that ATC gives to us direct vectors from initial approach fix to intermediate fix. However, we must consider some limitations. First, direct vectors to the intermediate fix are accepted if the distance between the final approach fix and the intermediate fix is greater than 2 miles. Second, intersecting angle is not greater than 45 degrees respect to the final approach track. By the way, in this case, as can we see, from River to Nico, this condition is not complying. We could calculate the angle from the initial approach fix to intermediate fix using the FMC and checking what track offers. And we observe we have 58 degrees of track. If we subtract 3 degrees from the final approach course, we have an angle of 55 degrees, obviously higher than the 45 degrees required. So in this case, direct to Nico from River would not be possible. Other thing to consider is that the directs to the final approach fix are not allowed. Well, there is another limitation for VARO VNAV approaches. Altimeter corrections for low temperatures. Altimeter's errors occur at very low temperatures. When the temperature is colder than the standard, the true altitude is lower than indicated. So the altimeter error can be significant. We must check the limited temperature on the chart in order to safely proceed with this approach. In this case, we can see the limit is 15 degrees below zero. However, the VARO VNAV approach has a special characteristics. If the outside temperature is within the limits indicated on the approach chart, it's not necessary to apply the altitude corrections to the final approach fix or decision altitude. But we have to apply to the other altitudes affected in the procedure, like MCA or the missed approach altitude. You can find the altimeter correction table in the 737 FCOM in the supplementary procedure section in adverse weather and cold temperature. During the approach briefing, once we have applied the corrections to the altitudes, if any, we will select the LNAV VNAV minimums. Remember, don't make mistake and select the LPV minimums. In this case, for this approach, our minimums will be 330 feet. Other important topic to take into account is to determine if we are going to do the approach with the integrated approach navigation mode or not. Currently, all 737s with update 10.5 or higher already have this capability integrated, and its use is recommended for APV approach even for non-precision ones. Basically, the IAM capability converts the horizontal and vertical indications of the LNAV and VNAV modes in ILS lookalike, which really facilitates the interpretation of the indications, alerts, and standardizations of procedures and training of the crew, being the presentation similar than ILS in the PFD. Here can we see how the information of a conventional ILS approach is represented, with the flight model annunciator VOR log and glide slope mode. If we make an APV VARO VNAV approach without the use of IAM, we have a different presentation than the ILS, with NPS, vertical and lateral scales. The LNAV lateral and VNAV path vertical modes will also appear in the flight mode annunciator, and we will not have an indication of distance to the threshold. Doing the same VARO VNAV approach with IAM, simply activating approach on the MCP, as can we see, the presentation is similar to ILS, converting the NPS indicators into localizer and glide slope deviation pointers, In this case, it's the FMC who sends the deviations to the flight director with the autopilot activated. The type of approach and distance to the threshold will be shown as well, and the flight mode annunciator also indicate final approach course and glide path modes. On the final intercept course, we arm approach in MCP. So in the flight mode annunciator, we will see the final approach course and glide path modes in white. When intercepting, the lateral scale becomes a scale similar to ILS. And in the flight mode annunciator, we will see the final approach course mode activated. Intercepting the glide path, the same thing will happen. The scale is modified and the glide path mode is activated in the flight mode annunciator. Now the plane is ready to fly to minimums. Back to our approach to Amsterdam. The minimum to perform an RMP approach is 0.3 miles lateral and 125 vertical feet. Below 10,000 feet, we have to modify the RMP vertical to 125 feet, since by default the FMC selects 400 feet. We do this on page 4 on progress on the FMC.